Hi, everybody. It's Eileen McKusick, and I'm staying in an Airbnb in Ojai, California. And I sat down at the desk to get ready to log on for a meeting, and I observed this great background behind me, something that I'm really lacking in my own very transient life. So I thought I would take the opportunity of a nice background to have a little chat. So, what I want to talk about today is this idea that we all have around the concept of being triggered and what that means from a biofield tuning perspective. So when a person becomes triggered, somebody does something that causes that person to have an emotional response. Things start firing in the system and you're like, freaking out. And then that person becomes a villain and then you become a victim. And with this sort of sense of like, you did this to me, you are the reason why I am having a kerfuffle, a freak out. And the fact of the matter is that sometimes people really do shitty things that, would be great for them to not do, right? From a perspective of what we call successful diplomacy, we choose the path of effective communication and problem solving rather than overindulging this triggered response. Now, the fact of the matter is that these tendencies to have these responses to things comes from our inputs, comes from our childhood. We might have had a father who was always impatient with us. And so if somebody becomes impatient with us, then we feel ashamed, we get upset, and then they're dad and we're freaking out, and then that person's a villain. But the fact of the matter is that somebody else might not have any kind of response to that person's action at all. They might be like, whatever, screw me. So part of what's missing in this whole sort of like empath narcissist, this whole story is a recognition on the part of the victim that life happens in the space between each other. The victim is co-creating the situation by the attachment to their own emotional response. And I'll just give you an example, a personal example, where I was in a situation with someone close to me, and they were doing and saying something that was making me feel powerless, was making me feel frustrated. It was a familiar feeling, it was a feeling from childhood. Like, you have all the power and I don't have any, and I'm suffering as a consequence of like being under your thumb, And what I realized was, I just checked into my body and I became aware that my energy was also down in my left hip. I was all kind of like tucked over here and spinning out this story. And I realized that I wasn't in alignment. I wasn't in energetic alignment. I was in what I call the posture of victimhood, which is where we're frustrated over our unmet needs. We're feeling powerless to do anything about it. Generally, we're unheard. That's a part of the equation. And we're stuck and we don't see a way out of it. We don't see a way out of it because as a kid, there was no way out of it. You were a powerless victim, and that was true. But by the time you become an adult, you have a much wider range of choices and responses than to just go back into the same old story that's just really just neuronal and rhythmic firing in your system. It's just a habit. And it isn't anything that you need to like own and cherish and protect. It's a distortion that you don't even necessarily even solve. You don't solve it from that place. You can't think your way out of it. And most of the thinking that comes from being in this posture is just circular thinking of no way out. It's not solution oriented. It's not solution oriented. And very often the reason why it is not solution oriented is because on a fundamental level, you don't believe it's possible. So whenever I see anybody struggling with any kind of problem, the first thing that I ask them is, do you believe it's possible to solve this problem? And very often the first response is kind of considering it, feeling tension in their body and going, no, no, I don't believe it's possible, right? And that's the pattern from childhood. It was not possible then, and you're just stuck in the same story. So when you can step back, and go, okay, I'm willing to believe that it's possible to solve this problem. And then I say, do you want to solve it with all your heart? Like, is the discomfort being caused by this problem something you really, really want to solve? And then they'll say, yeah, I do, right? And then the next step is to believe that the resources that you need to solve the problem are at hand, right? I mean, you made it this far because the resources were always at hand. They are. It's just the way life is. So you locate those resources, you implement those resources, and then you solve the problem, and then you move on. And the problem in our culture today, and there's certainly many, is that people are really stuck in problems and putting all the energy into the drama that surrounds it, the talking behind backs, the stressing out, the lying awake at night, and they're just not getting to the place where they're just solving the problem and moving on because they're attached to their pain body, they're attached to their pain story. They're just in that habit, that rhythmic habit, and it's hard to get out of, And that's what Biofield Tuning does, is it helps us to settle down these habitual patterns, gain self-awareness around them, recognize that we don't need to attach to them. And it's all a tempest in a teapot, people, And there's so many times that when we go into drama, it's just out of habit and not out of necessity, and it's not effective. It's just a wander off the path into the thorns. So how can you stay on the path of being groovy, not kerfluffling, loving and appreciating everybody who's there, and successfully communicating when somebody crosses a boundary that you don't dig and you want them to get that, and you solve that problem, right? Now, there's a lot of assholes in the world. I know that. I've had my share of them, and I always say, like, everyone needs an asshole in their life to help them work their shit out. Yeah. So if you've got assholes in your life, you're still working out your shit. But I think that you get to a point when you've worked out enough shit that assholes stop being assholes. They change. And that's amazing, man. I've seen that happen over and over again because you've stepped out of that role of victim. You've stepped out of that dance. And they don't have any choice but to step out of it too, right? So I want to come back to this idea of inner alignment because this is really the trick to this. And that is that when I became aware that my inner energetic arrangement, my composition, my distribution of my mind within my body is all over here. You think about it, it's like I'm all lit up over here. So what you do when you're being a victim, when you're fussing, when you're in a trigger, something like that, is you might be angry, maybe you're in anger and you're like all over here and, resentful. And I mean, you can be kind of anywhere in your system that's out of balance. Where do we want to be? We want to be in our midline. We want to be in our center. Because that's how you stay groovy, is by staying in contact, in awareness of your center. And then you go through life in a more balanced way. And you're not going off into the rough, kerfluffling here and kerfluffling there. That's all a waste of time and energy. Nothing is going to get in the way of manifestation faster than feeding your triggers, feeding your drama, feeding the noise, feeding the nonsense. It sucks up all your juice. And the number one reason why you are not manifesting, what you want is because drama and self-righteousness and story and pain body and all of that is sucking the juice. And you take all that energy and all that stuff that's out of phase, you bring it in phase and center and concentrate your energy. Suddenly that focus gives you the efficiency and the drive that you need to complete tasks or to show up or to hear the cue that says go here or talk to that person, make this link, that makes whatever happen, right? So let's just do a little exercise together about bringing our energy just into center, into alignment. So just take a moment to kind of check in. Where's your body at right now, right? And I want you to imagine that you have the power to use your mind like a magnet to kind of pull all your energy from wherever it is into the center midline of your body. I remember feeling like everyone needs to take a breath. So take a breath, take a few breaths, right? I want you to breathe into your belly, and then I want you to breathe out your butt, okay? Breathe into the belly, really loosen that tailbone, get grounded. This is the simplest thing you can do to avoid fussing, is to just breathe out your butt, okay? So taking that breath, bringing that awareness into that midline, just pulling everything into the center, into your core, and this alignment and down the midline of the body. Feeling your solar plexus. You know, I believe you're better off resting your awareness. Your solar plexus, the area sort of behind and below your navel, as like a seat of consciousness, is a place to rest your awareness rather than in your head. It's your head that kerfluffles. You know, it's thinking. The thinking mind, I really come to the conclusion that the thinking mind is almost useless. And that when we overindulge thinking, we're really wasting energy. It's sort of like an investment with no return. You know, you're way better off learning to quiet the thinking mind, practicing over and over and over and over and over again, to bring yourself into a state of listening, into just quiet presence, into pretending you're a houseplant. Well, let's just do that for a moment. Coming into that midline center awareness, maybe you're stuck a little on the left side and you need to kind of jimmy it into the center. You're a little stuck on the right. Maybe like top half is one way, bottom half is the other. And we're really just gonna come into an inner energetic alignment, spinal alignment, and then just be quiet for a moment and listen. Good. I mean, you can do that anytime. Anytime. But you become self-aware, you're in drama, you're in a kerfluffled, you know, and once you change your orientation, your inner orientation from the pain body, from the habit, into your neutral center, what will happen is you will step back and you will realize that you can witness the situation from a different perspective. You're an adult. You can make a proactive choice. You can become part of the solution instead of thrashing around in the problem. And the better you get at that, the more ease you get to enjoy it. And actually, the more fun and playful life becomes. So, okay, that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. Take care.